I'm Bergman. I'm a host and also a writer and longtime friend of Keshet, and I get to have the honor of interviewing Mimi and Jacob. There are a lot of things that are fairly terrible about the current circumstances in which we find ourselves, but a nice thing, I don't know, I'm looking for the silver lining here. One nice thing is that instead of just 2 minutes on the podium with Mimi and Jacob, we get to enjoy a longer conversation and to hear more about them and their experiences and their projects. And after having spoken to the both of them earlier, I can tell you, you're going to enjoy that. This conversation will be recorded, so please leave your camera off, and if you need to stay anonymous, please change your display name on Zoom. Even if you are not a part of the panel, I'm advised that if you interact in any way, including raising your hand or asking a question, it will show a display name. So if you need to remain anonymous for any reason, which of course we 100% support, if that's what you need to do, please take this moment while I'm talking and introducing Jacob and Mimi to change your display name. We will definitely leave time at the end of this for questions. So put them in the chat or use the raise hand function, and the questions will be sort of digested and then sent back to us toward the end. And now I want to introduce you to the real kind of main attractions here, Jacob and Mimi Lemay. They've given me a bio to read, which was super interesting. And then I read the article that is referenced in it. And then I read the first several chapters of Mimi's book that's referenced before I got interrupted by one of my own children. But I highly recommend both. At the age of 2.5, Jacob Lemay began telling his parents they were mistaken about his assigned gender. I am not a girl, he said, I am a boy. And by 3, he was showing signs of unhappiness and anxiety. Now 10 years old, Jacob is thriving. With his family, he continues to advocate for inclusion, equality, and understanding as they share Jacob's story and transformation with the world. Jacob and I talked a bit earlier about pets and hockey, some of the other things that he likes also. When Mimi Lemay published a letter to my son Jacob on his 5th birthday in 2015, with her son's permission, the Lemay family story went viral. It got picked up by Boston.com. There was a segment on the NBC News entitled Jacob's Journey. And it apparently is the most watched piece on the entire network. Mimi's memoir, What We Will Become, weaves the story of her upbringing in ultra-Orthodox Judaism with her parenting journey with Jacob. That came out in 2019. It has received a lot of well-deserved, beautiful reviews. Today, all of the Lemay family members are advocates for transgender and non-binary rights, having lobbied for Massachusetts Trans Equality Public Accommodations Bill campaign and the Yes on 3 campaign to ensure that protections remained in Massachusetts for trans and non-binary people. Jacob's older sister, Ella, was a vocal participant in Attorney General Healy's 2015 Everyone Welcome campaign, and apparently delivered an impromptu rebuke to the repeal of Title IX protections that guaranteed trans students protection in our nation's schools. Joe and Mimi Lemay are members of the Human Rights Campaign's Parents for Transgender Equality National Council, and Mimi speaks regularly at schools and businesses to promote inclusivity and I really love this in the bio, genuine belonging. So, as I said, I'm S. Bear Bergman. My pronouns are he and him. Can I ask the two of you to introduce yourselves, though I've already said quite a lot, and say your pronouns?
Great. Why don't we start with you, Jacob?
Okay. Hi, I'm Jacob Lemay, and my pronouns are he, his.
I'm Mimi Lemay, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
Great. So Mimi, how have things changed since 2015 when you wrote your massively viral and incredibly resonant letter to my son Jacob on his 5th birthday?
Well, a lot has changed, both for our family and I think in the wider world, we can agree. One thing that has changed is when I wrote the letter, I think in some ways it was a plea for understanding at a time when not many people knew that a transgender child could exist. I think that the general public, there were some misapprehensions, misunderstandings about what it meant to be transgender. It was confused with things like sexual orientation. And definitely the idea of a transgender child had yet to kind of break through to the general public understanding. And when I wrote the letter, it was for me to put something out there to contribute both to the understanding for the general public. And I didn't really expect it to get very far, but just to be there in case someone looked up the word transgender child, because when we hadn't gotten a lot of support. And there had been one family who had written about their experience through like a little a video with a slideshow with pictures. And that had helped us so much to have that one resource that we wanted to have something out there for other families who are struggling with a child who is questioning their gender identity. But we didn't really expect it to be any more than that. I wrote the piece, I put it online, and then I saw the interest in it grow. And from there, I discovered that there were struggles going on all across the country for transgender people to have rights that they didn't have. It was eye-opening to me. I didn't know that when I wrote the piece. And I was shortly after approached by a group in Massachusetts called Freedom Massachusetts. And they said, hey, did you know that when Jacob grows up, right now, as the law stands in Massachusetts, he could, for example, work in a restaurant and have his rights as an employee protected. But then if he actually tried to have dinner in the restaurant, somebody could kick him out because of his gender identity. And that just blew me and my husband away. And we realized that it wasn't enough just to talk about the experience, but we needed to actively be part of the change that was going to happen. Mm. And the last couple of years have brought a lot of work in that regard, a lot of joy, a lot of community. We've met some remarkable people, and I feel like Jacob is in good hands with them. But we've also had our challenges. And as the whole country is seeing rollback in rights, and our immigrant communities, our people of color communities are all feeling this pain right now. And so is the LGBTQ community under the current administration. So we are trying our hardest to fight back against the laws that are unfair and create inequality, and trying very hard to promote those that will level the playing field for all people in this country.
Mm-hmm. You know, when you say it, you put it so beautifully. You said that we were out and looking for things and we couldn't really find what we needed. And so I thought I would, do my part. It feels very Jewish to me, right? This sort of idea of, I have found a place where I don't think there's enough information. I don't think there's enough resources. So let me, do my part toward this tikkun olam, right? Toward this mending, mm-hmm. and offer what I have. Are there other ways that your Judaism has influenced you, either of you really, as activists?
I would say absolutely. For one thing, the idea that we are all connected, and that when one of us suffers, the other suffers, and that we're different parts of a body, so to speak. That's That's, you know, an idea that is found throughout the literature and the texts in Judaism, that we are all connected through God, through our being as part of God. And to not let our brother fall by the wayside, brother, sister, other fall by the wayside, is really important to our culture as Jews. That sense of responsibility, the personal onus for the world, and that if we lose one life, it's like we lost the world. If we save one life, we've saved the world, is something that I was raised to believe and has always profoundly shaped me. And also, I think back to the words of Hillel, the beloved sage Hillel, who said in Pirkei Avot, Im ein ani li mili, if I am not for myself, you know, then you know, who will be for me? In other words, if I don't stand up for myself, who will stand up for me? Kashani la'atzmi, but if I'm only for myself, ma'ani, then what am I? If I am living a solitary life and selfish and not thinking out for others. Ve'im lo achshav, and if not now, ematai, then when? If I can't stand up now as someone struggles, then I am losing my chance to impact the world, and what comes in the future could have been different had I not stood up. So that those ideas, I think, are pretty, you know, very much a part and parcel of the fabric of Judaism and of the messages that I've gotten since I was young.
And then now you're passing on to Jacob.
Yeah.
Jacob, let's talk to you for a minute. You've been an activist since you were 5, which is a wild thing to say. What has that been like for you as things have changed? How have you continued to engage with activism?
I've really enjoyed it, knowing that I must have saved many lives and made people feel a lot better sharing my story. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, things are different since you're 5. There have been some legal changes in the state of Massachusetts, and you've worked on those campaigns, right?
Yes.
What kind of things did you do?
I've been here with my mom, and
yeah, and you've shared your story.
And I've shared my story with many people who, some people who were unsupportive or didn't understand transgender rights before, until they saw our story, and yeah, and then if they had any trans family members, they would know how to just support them better.
For people listening who might have that question, and this is a question for the both of you, but I'd actually love to hear from Jacob first. What should family members do to support their newly out trans or non-binary family members?
What they can do is that it's very good if they what they have to do is respect their pronouns, let them use the bathroom that they want to, and call them by the name they prefer.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great start. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it feels to me that all those things have to do with basic respect, right? It's, you know, if somebody comes to you and tells you who they are, you know, if you value that human being, well, then you will respect what they require of you. And I think it comes down to that. If we respect people, if we love people genuinely in our families, right, and we want them to grow and be happy and healthy, then respecting them is the way to begin. And also, you know, think about, I would say go further, is that, you know, Jacob has agreed, you know, we have a unique experience, unique relationship, a unique position that we've been able to advocate, but respecting the privacy of family members is also really important. So if somebody in your family transitions, you might want to reach out to them to see whether you're allowed to, how can I talk about you? How would you prefer to be spoken of? What would make you more comfortable at the next Seder? And hopefully we will all be able to sit down around the table together for, just those little gestures of, respecting their humanity and saying, I would like to make this easier for you. I know it can be difficult. Are there any conversations I can have for you with other family members and advocate for you? How can I support you and be an ally is really important.
I love this focus on asking questions. How can I support you?
Very Passover.
Right? It's very Passover, right? In my head, I'm rewriting the 4 questions for a trans relative, right? Or for supporting a trans relative. I feel like that's a thing that I'll work on later. But, Jacob, you're definitely not you're the wise child. Mm-hmm. in this situation, for sure. So Mimi, you grew up in the Orthodox community, and that's part of your memoir, What We Will Become. And the full title is What We Will Become, A Mother, a Son, and a Journey of Transformation. You tell this story in alternating chapters. One chapter is about you and your journey around Orthodoxy and with your family of origin, and then the alternating chapters are about your experience as the mother of a trans son. Can you talk a little bit about how those things go together for you and what made those feel like the two, it works in the book like 2 pieces of a conversation through time, and they don't meet until like the last quarter of the book. I'd love to just sort of hear you talk about what's similar about that, what feels familiar to you in that.
So it's interesting that you asked that question, because for me, the greatest struggle in writing the book was in figuring out what the structure would be. Mm-hmm. Would I go entirely chronologically, starting with my own birth, and then the story about Jacob would come toward the end? I felt like I needed to show the symmetry, the parallels between the 2 stories so that they could inform each other. Because to me, the sense of deja vu that I experienced when my child came out as transgender to me, and that struggle for me as a parent who didn't know at the time, felt eerily familiar to my own struggle in some ways of trying to find my place, my own role in life as a Jewish woman in an ultra-Orthodox community where that role was very set already. And it's, I can't say that I can ever understand the experience of a person with gender identity, who has a different gender identity than the one assigned at birth. It's not exactly the same. It can't ever be exactly the same, but there were some nodes, some points that almost rang with the same tune to me, because people told me growing up that God had one intention for me. God had a purpose for me. It was set, it was prescribed. I was to grow up and learn enough about the Torah and Judaism in order to raise the household, an observant and a faithful household, and support my husband in his learning. But I soon discovered growing up that the keys to the castle in my community was the learning. And that wasn't something I was allowed to do or expected to do past a certain age in an intense way. And so I began to rebel inside against this, but learning my whole life that this was the only way that was right, I started to question my own self, my identity as a woman. And I said, you know what, I have to be a bad person if I want this. This isn't right. There's something wrong with me. God intended you to be this way, and there's something wrong with you if you know differently about yourself and if you want something different from your life. And that's very different than gender identity. But when my son came along and said something to the two, I am someone that you do not know me as, that society says I have to be one way, but I am different, Mom. I know this about myself. It almost felt like a bell rang in my head. And it gave me that sense of, I need to protect this child, because if I turn him away, if I close him down, if I force him into this box, he may suffer damage just like I did as a child, when people told me there was only one way I could be. So I felt like those two stories needed to be told in alternating chapters, so that you could follow my story, you could see the damage as it was happening, and eventually the resurrection, at the same time as you're reaching, a point in Jacob's dysphoria and later in his joy as he is able to transition, and that you're able to see those two stories in parallel and realize that journeying toward authenticity has many forms. And one of them is the journey that someone like Jacob, the brave journey that someone like Jacob goes on, and that we need to respect and affirm that.
I really enjoy these looks as the two of you sort of glance at each other, in a very like, we're both looking forward at the camera, but I'm still here. I'm still here with you kind of way. I really I enjoy and appreciate, and I think a lot of other people do as well, seeing Jacob be like clear, specific, and obviously loved and well.
So loved.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very obviously. And I'm gonna pull this thread out. You sort of talked, Mimi, just now about there being sort of that your struggles with gender and orthodoxy really laid the ground, or prepared the way for Jacob to be able to say, this is who I am, and for you as a mother to remember, like, oh, I also knew who I was. Like, he's 5 years old, but this isn't ridiculous. I also felt a sense of that clarity. And I appreciated earlier, Jacob, when you were talking, your real sense of clarity around what people can do in families and in communities to welcome and respect trans people regardless of their age. But you're in school now. Are you in the 5th grade?
Fourth grade.
4th grade, right. And I know that you've done a lot of work around trans and non-binary young people in schools, and in particular about how to help teachers and staff really welcome trans kids and non-binary kids. What do you tell them? Like, what are Jacob's top 3 hot tips for how to do a good job at making a welcoming school environment for trans and non-binary young people?
Definitely the teachers and the students need to be educated, know how to react if one of their students came out as trans. Let them use the bathroom they feel most comfortable in, and let them be on the sports team that they feel like they need to be on. Mm-hmm. And never out a kid. If they don't want anybody to know that they're trans, that make sure that they shouldn't tell them without permission.
Adding people is really important. And you said before the pronouns as well.
Definitely pronouns.
Pronouns, proper name, all that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And do you find that people listen to you when you say these important things? Adults are not always great at listening to kids.
Yeah. So a lot of all my teachers and my friends are very supportive. And yeah.
There's an audience question that I would like to follow up with. Someone's asked, how do you balance being so out as a trans kid, with just kind of wanting people to let you live your life and be a 10-year-old boy and not a, trans boy like it's a special category?
I usually not many people I know in my school, except the teachers, really. Like most of my teachers know I'm trans, but pretty much not many students know I'm trans, except the friends I've told. And actually, a couple of people came up to me and thought I was cool because they saw me on TV a couple times, and but they were very nice about it. But they treat me normal, just like any normal kid.
That's good.
Nice. Mimi, were you gonna?
Oh yeah, no, I think for the most part, when you read the headlines, it feels like it's such a big topic, but when you get down to it, most people are good. Most kids don't care about anything but, what they're playing or what's happening today or the drama of the school today. And so, people have come up and said that they are proud of seeing him on TV, proud of seeing him speak up. But then life goes back to normal, and it's not that huge. It's funny. We did a there's been good media and there's been not so great media, and very early on, before I could distinguish between the two, we did a piece, local television, and the headline that they had decided to write about our story is that parents step into a snake pit of controversy with their transgender 5-year-old. Yeah, that was the headline, and I laugh at it today. I mean, it's funny, but it's not. Snake pit of controversy. Like, oh my God, you would think we were living every day in a snake pit of controversy. But the simple truth is that people, don't care past if they get to know you, if they're decent people, if they understand respect, then once, they get back past the curiosity, perhaps it's just life is normal. Let's move on and have a game of Gaga or whatever.
I don't know that game.
Oh, Gaga, yeah.
Gaga, yeah.
That's like the playground game.
It's a fun game where you it's a fun game where you have like a ball and you have to hit people beneath the knees, and if you hit them beneath the knees, they're out, and the last person standing wins. And
but if they catch the ball.
But if they catch the, actually no, that's.
Oh, is that a different game?
Yeah. That's
okay.
But no, that's even. Yeah,
Anyway, we have a date then. We are going to come to your house and play Gaga.
Oh, excellent. Good. I'm glad. I also, as you know, have a 10-year-old. So we're 100% ready. It's entirely possible that game just has a different name in Canada. And that's why I don't recognize it. But yes, we'll love that. We're ready for you here. So can I just sort of, with all the media attention and now the book, which I guess was about a year ago, and being on TV.
Yeah.
What's that?
For December, January, February. Yeah, about 5 months ago.
5 months, yeah.
Something like
that. Oh,
yeah.
Is that all?
Yeah.
So do you hear from a lot of people? You said that your desire was to really put something out there that other parents and kids would be able to engage. Do you hear from folks, and what kinds of letters or emails do you like the best?
So my top favorite, there's two that I think compete for my heart. One is a parent of a young child who said, I've been struggling to accept my son or daughter. And this really, really helped me put it all in context. Or this gave me something that I could give to my spouse because they weren't on board. And now I really get it. Or now the grandparents are going to help because I gave them your book or I gave them an article. And that feels wonderful because I think there is an issue of pikuach nefesh here, that there are lives at stake because without the support, trans and non-binary kids don't always do so well. So it is absolutely essential, I feel, that more resources get out there, and I'm just so happy and honored to have been able to contribute to that, and us contributing as a family to that. And I also love appreciate and feel honored by the messages I get from trans or non-binary adults. And I also frequently have my heart broken when they say, I wish I'd had that when I was growing up. And sometimes I hear wonderful stories of parents who supported way before a lot of knowledge was out there. And that also just lifts my heart. But it's good to see that one of the things that's been most precious about this journey is the way that the adults in the trans and non-binary community have reached out to help the younger generation, like my son. And I feel that more than anything that I can do for him, having role models, having people say, I've been through it, I've been through the mill, and I know you can make it out, and I know your son's gonna be okay. And that means everything to me. And I take each one of those messages to heart.
Mm-hmm. This is the crying part, isn't it? We're all gonna get, I'm like, this is so beautiful. But also, you know, I can remember how much I longed for that as a young person. And I also get a lot of messages now from people who say, seeing you as a grown person and as a father and as a Jew has created a possibility model that I needed or that my family needed. I mean, I think a thing that's true is that a lot of families are afraid that a large part of their disapproval comes from fear. And I'm not in any way trying to excuse people's bad behavior, but I think if you don't know any trans people, trying to imagine your child's life can feel really overwhelming. Or imagine the lives of, you know, your friend or your other relative. And you know, there are people, I think, in all of our families who the proof is in the pudding for them, right? Like to see a healthy, happy 10-year-old Jacob who is, you know, busy with hockey and dog walking, and we had a whole thing about hedgehogs earlier, right? Like I imagine it helps some of them to feel less concerned.
Yeah, I think so, you know. And there's some of those letters that I've read to Jacob from parents who have said, you know, I read the article, or I saw Jacob, you know, giving an interview, and, you know, I showed it to my child who just transitioned, and it made them so happy. And now they want that haircut, or now they, you know, or they're
everybody
like,
wants this haircut.
yes, who wouldn't want that haircut?
It's a particularly good haircut. And as someone who has not had a haircut in a month,
She gave me a haircut. She gave me one maybe like a couple of weeks ago.
I do this. Yeah. This is the quarantine haircut. I'm actually really proud.
Pretty good.
I'm gonna need a tutorial.
I'd love to give one. It starts with the electric, what's it called? The trimmer.
We have those. For sure.
Okay. So you just find the right setting and you zip. Anyway. But yeah, so it is, I hope that, you know, we can provide that model of it's going to be all right. It doesn't only get good, it gets besser, to use the Yiddish. So
that's adorable. I can't believe I've never heard that, but
I heard that somewhere online, so it's not mine, but yes, it gets besser.
Can I ask, sort of, we were just talking about like possibility models. Can I ask each of you, and maybe Mimi, you can answer first, and Jacob, you can sort of take a minute to think about it, but who are your role models or possibility models in this work, as activists, as a family? Who are you looking at and saying, okay, this person did it, so I can do it, or they did a great job and now I know how to do better? Like, where are the two of you looking for inspiration and also for support?
Yeah. So do you want to answer first, or should I?
Maybe you can.
Okay. So I am just so blessed because I've met some remarkable advocates along the way. And I think I learned a lot about advocacy from the beginning from my friend Casey Seffredini. I don't know if you know him. He's a lawyer. He's now the director of Freedom for All Americans. They're fighting all across this country, all the anti-LGBTQ laws, or trying to get the equality laws passed. And I think he was one of the first people who really taught me how to advocate and had such a positive attitude, despite all the unmentionable things that came his way, and were thrown at him. He always maintained this hopeful, positive outlook based on his knowledge that things were going to get better and the arc of history was going to bend towards justice. And I go to him for comfort, when something particularly upsetting happens, and I'm like, what does this mean? What's going to happen? And he doesn't give false hope, but he gives hope, because he is that good at accomplishing what he wants to accomplish with the kind of positive energy that really makes a difference. And then also I am just so blessed because I'm a member of a parents' council at the Human Rights Campaign. And I've been able to work with some remarkable people, including the trans activist Sarah McBride, who is now actually currently running for Senate in Delaware. So if anyone here is from Delaware, get involved in that campaign. She's amazing. And also Ellen Kahn, who just have really helped me grow as an advocate, and all the members of the council, parents from across the country who are fighting in their districts, in their communities, in Arizona and in California and in Florida and in some really tough spots, some of them. And so I have a wonderful community of advocates who are now my family, to help, show me the way, to pick me up when I fall down, and to be power behind anything that I'm doing.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm like pretty much the same as you. Just a bunch of advocates that we've met and that are nice that share their story, and they're very inspiring.
Well, I remember one particularly amazing moment. We had a potluck at our house, and a couple of years ago, and you were very little, so I
don't think that's like a couple of years ago then.
That was a couple of years ago. Anyway, and who came to our house? A most remarkable young man who had taken his Gavin Grimm.
Yeah.
And he came and he talked to you a little bit. I think you were very young at that point, so I don't know, what you were able to take from that, but I know that he really impressed you, because after that, you were like, Gavin Grimm, like that is a person that I want to be like and follow. So that was a very unique moment.
Yeah.
I remember that, but anyway.
And how has it been navigating your other family members around Jacob's transition? I definitely hear and super appreciate that, you are 150,000% supportive. I'm wondering if everyone hopped on that boat when you did.
Yeah. It took a little bit for my family to understand what was really going on, but after they realized, my sisters, my family, and everybody just treated me like they would treat any like that or something.
Yeah, that's true. So for us, it took a little while, but now we're like Bear said, we're like 1,500% on board. But I think in terms of extended family, my mother-in-law, was aware of the struggle we were going through. We would talk to her about it, and she is a Catholic woman of faith, but very, very tolerant and accepting. And she pretty much from the beginning, she was like, well, that's, if you've done the research, and we would give her articles and things to read, and she would research it herself. She was on board, pretty much from the start, which was very lucky for us because she's a big part of our lives. My own mother didn't live here, but she would come to visit for extended visits, and she's an ultra-Orthodox. And so that, I think, was a bit more of a struggle for her.
Yeah. She took a couple, I think she took a couple months to, maybe a little more than a couple months to, maybe 4 months to respect my pronouns and call me by my real name.
It might have been a little quicker than that.
Honestly, I don't really know. Yeah. I know she was calling me by my dead name for a while.
For a little while, and then we kind of had a conversation and said it has to stop here. Yeah, I think it was more like 2 weeks.
It felt like 4 months.
It must have felt like a really long time. Yeah. But anyway, whatever it was too long, right? Yeah, because respect, you didn't need to earn respect. It should have been there, right? But I think, coming from a different world, not having such strong framework. Her faith is a framework that everything goes into, and she didn't have the frame for this. And so we had to provide that for her, and it was a struggle for her. But, first comes action, then comes understanding sometimes. And so the action came first with her. So eventually, my husband said, you really need to start using Jacob's name. This was about a week or so into the transition. And then, we would remind her about the pronouns, and the conversations were ongoing, and they weren't always pleasant, and they didn't between me and her, and they didn't always end up in a pleasant manner. But I think she really has come on board, and which is remarkable for her, given, I know what the outlook is, I know what the frame of reference is, and yet she does love her grandson very much, and understands that this is something that she may not completely understand, and it may not be something that the rabbis in her community will ever approve of, but she knows that this is what's right for her son, for her grandson, and love does win. It does triumph. So I think it's really great. And other than that, we had extended family that kind of went along, and then some of the bigger divisions just kind of exploded around the time of the last election. It kind of was a catalyst for some, there was unspoken disagreements that just simmered and then kind of blew up. So, and that was unfortunate, but I think there are many families who can relate to that situation. And there are many moms and dads and caregivers who have had it harder than us, who have had, lost a spouse over this, or, the parents not, the grandparents not coming aboard. And I always feel just such a deep admiration for the families who make that choice and say, my kid comes first, because that is what it is. The only choice is that your kid comes first. I think it's the only right choice.
Yeah, I really agree. There's a follow-up question from an audience member who's curious, what is your connection to religious communities at this point?
That is the $1 million question.
Does it come with an actual $1 million? Because I
wish I was handing the $1 million out now.
I would. Yeah.
It'll be in the mail with the check, what's it called, check coming from the government, the stimulus check.
Oh, the stimulus check.
No, I'm joking. Yeah. So it's hard because in some ways I felt very burnt when I left my community. And, just to reiterate, very, very ultra-Orthodox community. Something similar to, I know a lot of listeners now have a reference point with the Netflix show on Orthodox. Very similar in some ways, that we weren't Hasidic growing up. However, what I wore, the dress, the way I was supposed to think about things, my expectations for how I spoke to people, married, related to people, every aspect of my life was controlled by ritual, law, and philosophy, really. And when I made that break, it was painful. And so for many years, I had absolutely no connection to the Jewish community. I wouldn't go to synagogue. I had no interest in kashrut or Shabbat or anything like that. But as I've had kids, I've slowly started to reintroduce some of that in my life. And I like to say I'm owning it again. I'm owning it for the first time, rather. And so slowly, like we've built up what we do on the holidays. You know, we just had a Passover Seder.
Yeah.
And we make it a lot of fun for the kids. And I try to look for the meaning in these things that feels to me relevant, powerful. It reflects the values that I have. And there's a lot there. There's a lot in it. And I absolutely love to look back now that I am many years away, 20 years away from my previous experience. I can now look back at some of the things I learned even in seminary with joy, with respect, with some appreciation. And so I try to give those things to my kids. I'm not a regular synagogue goer. I did go more frequently. We actually moved towns about 1.5 years ago, and now I'm starting to get to know people in my community, which is very Jewish, very different than the Judaism that I grew up in, actually, but very progressive and kind of accepting, very welcoming to people, even with spouses from other faiths and stuff like that. So I'm starting to bring some more of that back in, but that was a long progress. I mean, a long journey to get there.
I imagine so. And here you are today, being honored with the Hacham Lev Award from Keshet, which, you know, is a Jewish organization, and even the name of the award refers very specifically to that, you know, to that difficult, holy work. In light of all of these things, what does it mean to your family to be recognized and uplifted in this particular way with this award from Keshet?
It feels to me like I've come full circle. And when I was younger, what I had to offer the world, the Jewish world that I lived in, was not something that they wanted from me. And now to see Jewish organizations like Keshet, who are doing this life-saving, world-changing work under the banner of Judaism and saving lives, and to have them look at what we do and say, we recognize you for that, is so moving and so humbling. And I feel like I found my home. I finally found the Judaism I probably ought to have had growing up. And it is very moving for that reason. How do you feel about it, Jacob?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same as you do.
Yeah, cool.
So last question for Jacob, and then I think we need to wrap up. I can't believe an hour went by so fast, but
Wow.
It's an hour.
It's been an hour. It's been so great to talk and to hear all this stuff. So you're 10, you already have a considerable activist record behind you. Since clearly there's nothing you can't do, what's next? Like, what other things are you looking forward to in the future, either as things that you want to work on changing or things that you just want to kick back and enjoy?
I'm not 100% sure what is next for that. I look forward to advocating more and for the whole pandemic to be over, for sure.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah.
From
your lips to God's ears.
Exactly.
Exactly.
We're all ready for that.
I think we're very much all looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And so what would we be doing this summer if we were able to get out and about?
We're actually going to this sleepaway camp called Camp Cody, and it sounds like a very fun place. There's really unique things there, like for example, like beekeeping and stained glass working and really cool things like that.
Not the camp I went to.
And like water skiing, just like really fun and unique things there. And we're also gonna do a little traveling,
Oh
probably
God, I
to
can't
like
wait.
Cape
Cape Cod.
Cape Cod.
Hey, P-Town. We love
P-Town.
P-Town.
Oh yeah, we love P-Town.
That
Yeah.
sounds so nice.
It all, even going to the store sounds nice now.
Right?
Right.
The exciting wilds of Costco.
Right, exactly. One day soon.
I want to thank you both so much, both for being with us this evening and also for the work that you're doing. I want to encourage people to keep up with Jacob and Mimi and the work they're doing through Keshet. There's more information available on the Keshet website for our amazing honorees for the Chacham Lev Award. I just remembered that they wrote me out a conclusion. Oh, it's just the same thing as I was going to say. Don't forget to tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. I don't know if they still say that, but 7 p.m. April 20th. And I will get to talk to another one of this year's outstanding nominees. Outstanding is the name of the gala, though he is also outstanding as you are, Rabbi Becky Silverstein. You can register on Facebook, click the link, do the thing. And this is also the moment where I remind you that if you would like to make a donation to Keshet to support working for full LGBTQ equality in Jewish life, you can make a gift by visiting the website, keshetonline.org. I know that there's information on the website, keshetonline.org. I imagine that someone is probably typing it into a display window as we speak. But Keshet does a ton of work as advocates and activists and educators. And if you are inspired by the work that the Lemays are doing and all of the ways that they are having these conversations with people who might not otherwise listen, then your desires and Keshet's are aligned, right? We are all working on this together, and we love having your presence here and to be with you this evening. We would love to have your financial support as well. If you can spare it, it takes money to do all of this work. And there is, as Jacob and Mimi have demonstrated, there's a lot yet to do. I want to congratulate the both of you and thank you for everything that you're doing, both like in professional, thank you very much for all of your time and talents kind of ways, but also in like, there is a part of me that is 10 and feels so grateful that, you know, that the 10-year-olds of today are doing good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been our honor
Yes.
to know you and to know Keshet and the remarkable work they do. It is just the very best that our faith can bring, is this kind of inclusivity. And like you said, to reach full equality in every sphere, in faith, in legislation, supporting the entirety of our community. The way Keshet does is a remarkable act of tikkun olam, and I'm just so very proud to be a member of this organization and to be able to do this work with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for joining us today in the audience. We all super appreciate you, and we hope to see you back here again at 7 o'clock on April 20th for a conversation with Rabbi Becky Silverstein. He's amazing and delightful. You definitely won't want to miss it. Thanks so much again, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.